Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to be making these really beautiful spring inspired floral junk journals made with large envelopes for the cover. This video is in collaboration with Bontic Vintage Designs on Etsy, who have some of the most gorgeous printables I have ever seen, and I also have a whopping 50% discount code for that shop as well, which is ms.paperlover50. You can find that in the description box as well. But I'll talk more about that kind of thing towards the end of the video. For now, I'm going to show you how I made these journals from start to finish. So the first job is obviously to print everything out that I'm going to use. I was printing off some things for the covers there, and then I print off double-sided on 100 GSM paper some of the full page designs and half page designs that come in a lot of these kits that they have in their Etsy store. I always print double-sided because I think it looks nicer, quite frankly. And then I've also done some of them, printed them on vellum, which look particularly gorgeous. I love printed vellum. It's such a thing that I love it. And then I add a few bits and pieces here to pad them out and give some variety. Some plain pages like craft paper, parchment paper, some old typewriter paper, things like that to break it up a bit. Some mulberry papers, a few envelopes, and some floral book pages, of course. And then I trim them all down, every single paper, to fit only a little snippet of the footage of that, because it does take quite a long time and it's very boring just to watch me cut things over and over again. But once those were done, I decided I wanted to work on my covers. So as I said, these are made out of large envelopes. So these are very sturdy, good quality A4, slightly bigger maybe, size envelopes. I think they might be Conqueror, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't buy them, they were just found in the stash of my dad's old office supplies, but they're really lovely and I love making journals out of them. But obviously I can only print up to A4, so the prints that I've created, I didn't create them, printed off for the covers are much smaller than the envelope, so I had to add some kind of detailing and interest around the borders as well. I also wanted to add a bit of sturdiness to the little envelope flaps as well, so I have cut out some panels and roughly measured them and cut them to size. I don't do things precisely. And then with that all ready to go, I'm taking Distress Oxide inks and a mix of blending tools and blending brushes to add a mix of lovely colours around the borders that blend in and look really pretty with the different covers that I have chosen. Colours I am using are, I did write them down, I've got Bundled Sage, Speckled Egg, Salvage Patina and Milled Lavender, and I don't use every single one on each different cover, but each one gets used in some way. I think the most common one is the Bundled Sage, is on pretty much every cover, I'm going to say. And then obviously I do the inside as well, occasionally bringing back the printed piece just to make sure I've, coloured enough of that border and it all blends and looks nice. If you're thinking right now, that's not very much glue to use on a cover, won't that come loose? Yes, it will, but I'm going to stitch the covers in place because if you are a regular around here, you know I love, with the journals that I make, I like to add a lot of stitching. So that's how those are going to go on. Trimming those little flaps a little bit so they work just a little bit better with the panels I've made, and then doing the same on the front side as well with the cover and adding not very much glue at all. So with these three journals that I'm creating, they're all floral themed, but each one is different based on a different journal kit that's available at Bontic Vintage. So I've done one that is it's called Springtime Joy. This one I'm working on here is Shabby Peonies, and before that I think it's just called Floral. Might be called something in more detail. I will link the different kits that I have used in this video. I think it's just called Floral though. Nope, I've just checked. It's called Mixed Flowers. So the Shabby Peonies, pretty self-explanatory. Beautiful peonies in a sort of shabby vintagey style. Lots of different colour types as well. Like the cover I've printed off there, very colourful, but there's ones in there that are more green, blue, pinky ones, more neutral colours. Lots of colours in this one. Very much a floral vintage vibe. Same thing for the mixed florals, again a vintagey kind of shabby vibe that I absolutely love. The mixed florals is a particularly sort of shabby chic one, kind of thing going on. And then this one is the Springtime Joy, and this kit is so bright and colourful and beautiful. I'm really hoping someone's going to love it because There's so much going on. It's a very mixed media kind of vibe to it as well. Hopefully, as I'm working on them, you'll get a better idea of what the pages look like and stuff. There'll be a full flip through of each journal right towards the end of the video so that you can see them in a little bit more detail. So once that's done, I take them over to my sewing machine, and this is where something went a little bit wrong. I did not realise about 2 minutes into starting this first cover that I had accidentally changed the tension on my sewing machine. I'm pretty sure this was what the problem was. And it meant that underneath, the stitching underneath was just this horrible mess of bundled up, tangled thread, and it looked horrendous. And it took me a long time to figure out what I'd done because I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to sewing machines. You can see me looking there going, what in the heck has happened here? So I had to make a slight adjustment to this cover to cover up my horrendous mistake. But once I did figure out what I'd done, another thing that I'm doing to the covers, as well as stitching on those printed pieces, obviously I cannot stitch at one edge because then that would close the envelope and you wouldn't be able to use it. But I'm doing 3 or 4 lines of stitching on each side, so, and doing them sort of wavy and weaving in out of each other, adding interest to that border. So it's not just a plain colour, you've got something going on, and it adds a nice texture as well. And I also stitched around those little panel pieces on the envelope flap just to make sure it's nice and secure and not going to go anywhere. Now, I thought I had filmed this, but apparently not. But what I did to rescue that first cover that had a little bit of the oopsies happening on it is I stitched a very wide lace trim around all 4 sides to cover up my mistakes, basically. So that one looks a bit extra because it's got the big trim around the edge. You might see it hopefully any second now. And the stitching at the back, obviously I had to completely unpick that and everything. But the inside covers are going to get covered in a way with something else. So you'll see what I do with those. You can see the stitching I did there. Once I finally realised the problem, I think it looks really pretty. And then there's the trim covering up my slight error. So the next thing I'm going to do is take some really pretty napkins, or serviettes if you prefer, that I would usually use for collage or decoupage, and I'm going to remove the backing from each one of those. So these napkins often have 1 or 2 layers of just a plain backing that has like no pattern at all. It might have a little ghosting of the pattern like this piece has, but you can't really see it when you use them. And I'm going to use those and paste them on those inside covers, which is going to do 3 things. It's going to hold the stitching in place better. Not that it really needs it, but it's there anyway. It makes the cover even more sturdy, and it adds this lovely effect that makes the image look like an oil painting, really. Now, you can do this with tissue paper, but you do get a slightly different texture with that. So it's up to you, obviously, what you use. For this, I use a mixture of PVA glue and water. You can use collage medium, but I find it doesn't go very far sometimes, and PVA glue and water works just as well. I do experiment with like the thickness of the paste. You want to make a sort of very thin paste, but not too thin. You saw a minute ago I was just practicing on some random things that are on my desk just to make sure that the paste was not going to make the ink run too much, it was going to stick well, and all of those things. I've just slotted a little ruler into the envelope opening as well so I don't accidentally glue it shut. An important thing to note here is if you have printed off your images on an inkjet printer, which is what the majority of people have, you have to be aware that the colours may run. So wait at least 24 hours after printing things off. Give them a long time to dry. Longer is even better. And the thinner your paste, the more likely things are to run. If you've got a laser, don't worry about it. If you are using things that you have, bought from a craft supply store, you should be fine. But if it's things that you've printed off at home, as I said, with an inkjet, it's just something to be aware of, really. Sometimes you can get quite a nice effect, like if it's not too runny, a little bit of ink running I think can look quite nice. I do that a little bit later on with something else. But generally speaking, you want the image to look nice and crisp and pretty. And as I said, underneath, the way it dries looks like an oil painting. It's so cool. On 2 of the covers here, I am adding just a little strip of lace trim with some red line tape because this is the edge of the cover that I couldn't stitch down because, as I said, if I did, I would close the envelope shut, and there would be almost zero point in making an envelope journal if you did that. I did that after the glue was dry, just in case that wasn't obvious. And then just to tone down, because obviously the lines you get through the tissue paper or the napkin paper, some of them can be a little harsh, so I am taking the Distress Oxides back in and lightly blending a little bit of colour around the edges and over some of these cracks. You still get that lovely effect, but it toned them down a little bit. Basically, the quicker you do it, the more like cracks and lines you're going to get, and the bigger they are. So if you go really, really slowly, you won't get as many really harsh ones, and probably don't need to do this stage. But with the covers pretty much done, it's time to move on to the inside of the journal and the signatures. They are going to be single signature journals, but quite chunky single signatures. I think I do have a piece of paper somewhere where I wrote it down. They're about 30 something pages, which works out at like 74 or 76 sides. So they're not massive journals, but they're not really, really slim ones either. But I sit down, I go through and I work out what order I want the pages in. I try and space it out so you don't get too much of the same thing together. Don't have like two plain pages together. There's always something patterned. Not too many like smaller pages together so they don't come loose or anything like that. Like, there's more thinking about it than is obvious right now, but I do quite like this stage. It's quite nice to chill and be creative and think about like how colours are going to work together and how patterns are going to work together and things like that. And when those are done, we take them over to my sewing machine, which is simultaneously my favourite part of making journals and my least favourite part of making journals. So what I do here is I take each signature, I go through it one page at a time and add pockets and tuck spots and flip outs and all those little interactive elements. Each one is stitched in because I like the look of it. I love the texture of stitching. It's more reliable than gluing it in place, and yeah, as I said, I think it looks nicer. And this stage is fun in that, like, thinking up all these different ways of making pockets and making flip outs and making all those interactive elements. I do enjoy that. But being bent over my sewing machine for a long time, I don't enjoy that so much, or at least my back doesn't enjoy that so much, because it takes me, I'm going to say 45 minutes per signature to do this, maybe more, especially if you're working with fabrics. I brought in some extra envelopes to make some extra things where I can flip out and make extra pockets. And yeah, so I'm sat there, I'm not just doing the sewing, I'm also thinking about ideas of how to add these pockets and things. And mostly I use scraps and leftovers from creating the pages for the signatures, but I didn't have too many for these, so I did print out a couple of the designs from the corresponding kit from the Etsy shop, just on some card to create extra pockets as well. You get a lot of choice from these kits. I'm not being paid to say this, by the way, I should add. I have been given these items to use for free, but I'm not being paid to say this, I will say. And you always know I'll be honest with you. But you get a lot of choice, like a lot. Like, I was almost overwhelmed with how much choice there is in each separate kit, like so many different page designs. So it wasn't as if I was limited in any way for choice. So I enjoyed the fact that I could bring in more of the designs by adding more pockets. I don't like to overwhelm the journal with pockets though. When I'm making a custom order and someone's like, I want something on every page, then fine. But for the ones that I've just made to put in the shop without any custom requests, as I said, I don't overwhelm it with pockets. So I think these work out as having about 16-ish in per journal, which you're probably thinking, why does it take you 45 minutes to do that? But I don't count every single thing I've stitched as a pocket. For example, just then I was stitching in some fabric, and on one side of it, it's just made the fabric into a page, so I don't count that as a pocket. I did stitch in some extra thing into envelope flaps, which makes an extra page. So as I said, those don't count as pockets. With that done, and I've just made hours and hours of work look like it took about 10 minutes, it's time to stitch those signatures in. Now, the first thing I do is check, and check again that every single page is facing the right way. Ask me why I check that so often. Like, maybe one time when I was in my early days, I sewed an entire journal in upside down. That was a fun time. Anyway, so I check that, measure where I'm going to put my holes, use my Tim Holtz pokey tool and my bookbinding cradle to poke those holes in. and then I separately measure and poke the holes in the cover. It just, I think it makes it easier. Like, I'm not having to force that pokey tool all through 15 to 20 layers of paper and then a heavy cover as well, because that would be very, very hard work. Simple saddle stitch to stitch these in, nothing complicated. I will learn Coptic binding one of these days, but it's not really relevant for a single signature journal anyway. Now with this peonies one, you may have noticed that I put it in upside down. It was on purpose. One part wasn't on purpose in that I put the cover on upside down. I think it could work either way, to be fair, but I preferred one side a lot more than the other side for a cover. And the only difference it will make, the inside cover doesn't matter as much. You can't really tell it's upside down at all, especially as it's divided in half by the papers. But it just means that the envelope flap comes around the front of the journal rather than around the back, and that's it really. But that was on purpose after I had made a mistake earlier on. Now, I don't want to be too much state the obvious here, but this is the internet, so you never know. But it's just a friendly reminder that this video is sped up. It is heavily edited, and I have cut out a lot of the repeat actions that I did, because every single thing I do I have to do 3 times or 4 times or even more than that. So yes, just reminding you, this is days and days of work snooped into a 30-minute video. Anyways, if you saw my Christmas video that was similar to this one, you may have seen in that video, I came up with an idea on the spot to weave ribbon through the spine to kind of hide the signatures, really. And I loved it so much, I'm basically doing it on everything now. So I'm going to do it to these ones. I'm adding this fairly wide kind of ivory coloured ribbon, which I'm glad I chose that one because I nearly used white, but the envelopes themselves are more of an ivory cream colour, so they work much better. I just weave them in and out of the signature like that, and it's super easy but has a really nice effect. It was, however, slightly harder to do on this journal because of the lace trim around the edge. I could either pull the ribbon tight and cause an awkward fold in the trim, or I had to have it slightly loose and not cause an awkward fold. So I've gone with the loose. I used those clips to hold it in place. But then whoever has this journal one day, hopefully maybe, they can adjust it if they want to, because it is not put on very tightly at all. Now you might be thinking, journals are pretty much finished and we've still got 10 minutes left. What's that about? Well, we're going to make some ephemera to put in the journals. So I just want to state, I have not asked Anton at Bontic Vintage about this. It's just something that I think is a good habit to get into if you are making journals from printables. So as short as I can possibly make it, most of these stores that offer printables like this will have policies for those who are going to sell items made from their products. And the policy usually is that it needs to be altered in some way. You can't just print something off and then distribute it, give it or sell it. You need to alter it in some way. That can be as simple as just binding it into a signature. That's fine. But when it comes to the ephemera pieces that you can print off, like these little cards here, and I have some tags and all sorts of bits, I find it important, for me anyway, to alter them in some way so I am really following the spirit of those guidelines. As I said, I've not asked Anton at Bontic Vintage about this. He may be totally fine and easy about it, like might not care at all. But as I said, I think it's a good habit to get into. Even if it's just the subtlest little something, at least you have altered it in some way, rather than just print it off, cut it out, put it in. Some printable sellers may be absolutely fine with you doing that, but it's always worth asking if you don't know for sure, or as I said, add some very subtle changes to it at the very least. So you saw with those cards, I did the same as I did to the covers, and I have done the sort of decoupage thing with the napkin paper. Dried those, cut them out and rounded the corners. I will be doing some extra things to those as well. And then here are some more of the printable elements. We've got various tags and little shapes and things. Obviously first is cutting them all out, which is a pain, but we get it done. And then I'm going to do various things to them. This one, for example, I have distressed the edges with a little distress tool, adding some salvage patina around the edge as well. And then I have a little pile of ribbon and fabric scraps that I'm going to add on. So this one I'm just stapling that on to make a little pull-out tag for example. These two little tiny pieces, I'm going to do basically the same two, distressing them around the edge, adding some colour, and then just like a little ribbon pulley out thingy. So it's not like I'm making an elaborate project on each and every single ephemera piece. I've done something to them. Obviously with the tags, the cutout tags, there's not tons and tons you can do to them, so I like to add one of those little hole reinforcer stickers, which I've coloured with an ink in some way that sort of matches the tag, and add various string, twine, trim, whatever, that I also think matches nicely. Now, I haven't left loads and loads of this footage in of me doing this because, as you can imagine, it's fairly repetitive. It takes a while. It's just one of those sit there for a few hours and do it. But yeah, don't get overwhelmed at the idea of doing this. Like, as I said, you don't have to make a beautiful art piece on every single one. It's just nice to add those little touches that make them your creation. And each of the journal kits has way more ephemera pieces or ephemera printouts than this. I only printed off 2 per kit, I think. One of, just like the 3x4-ish cards, and then 1 page of things that has tags and like those cool little jars and things. Oh, I also print them out double-sided, so I choose a nice random full page from the kit and double-side print on that as well, so they're backed with something as well. Didn't film it because I forgot, because I am a mess. But on those, the ones that I did the collagey thing on, I've also stitched around the edges in a dark brown because I thought it looked nice, really. And now is another fun bit that I enjoy, is going through the journals and putting all the little things in the little pockets and such. And what I tried to do with this one as well is kind of match the ephemera piece to the page in a way. I don't know if I've done it in an obvious way here, or something that works. Like, I put a yellow piece in that little purple envelope because on the colour wheel yellow and purple work together really nicely. I think there's like a little daisy on that tag I've put in that envelope. There's a daisy on the matching page. Just little things like that. You never know if someone's going to notice, but at least I know that I put the effort in to make it look as pretty as possible. But yeah, as I said, I love doing this stage. It's one of my favoritist parts. So much fun. This is the what one? Oh, this is the Springtime Joy one. I'm probably going to call it something different in my Etsy shop. Oh, did I not say these journals will be for sale in my Etsy shop? But yeah, I'll probably call it something different. I also decided that as these were all floral themed, that each journal needed a little envelope full of pressed florals. So I stitched these vellum envelopes, and I'm going through and adding various pretty dried and pressed petals and little flowers and things, all things that have basically come from my garden and pressed last year. And there we go. So we don't have a huge variety of flowers because, as I said, they mostly come from the garden, but I still think they look lovely nonetheless. Then I'm going to seal each one of those envelopes just with a little sticker so you don't have dried florals going everywhere. That would be bad. And then I decided also to add just a very small little like coin envelope with some pretty floral stickers in. These are the stickers that kind of go in my junk journal kits and creative journal kits. So I already have them to hand, and I know as well obviously how much they're going to cost me to add them to the journal, but I thought they would be a nice little addition. And I had some really cute tulip stickers that I thought would work, as I'm trying to go with a springy theme. I mean, I know technically peonies and spring aren't technically, but who cares? We don't care about technically here. Florals are pretty. So almost done now with the adding things and the journals in general. I'm going to put the envelope of the pressed florals in the built-in envelope that you have in the cover there. It was maybe a smidgen too big, but I got it in there. It's not that tight a fit. And then just find somewhere to put the little mini envelope as well. And the final thing is to add a nice length of ribbon as a closure for the journal. I'm using the same ribbon as I did on the spine because it looks nice and pretty and matches really, really nicely. I thread it under the signature to keep it in place, but also it's not fixed. So if somebody doesn't want that ribbon there, it's super easy to remove. And it is almost time for the flip throughs now. The journals are finished. I'm really proud of these. They are very pretty. I love florals. As many of you will know, I adore florals, and I had a great time working with these junk journal kits. As I said, the links will be below to Bontic Vintage Designs, as well as that huge 50% discount code. These journals will also be available in my Etsy shop to purchase. So this is the one created with the Springtime Joy kit. I'm going to call it Colourful Spring in my shop because I want to use different titles, just because I think it's a good business practice to use different words. This one is so colourful and bright, and as I said before, it has a lovely sort of mixed media vibe, so if that's your kind of thing, maybe you'll really like this journal. It also has little creatures in. There's like a horse and little birds. I think there's a cat page, which obviously I had to include because I'm a cat person. Even though I'm not using the journal, there was a cat page. I couldn't resist. So this one is 38 pages, or that's 76 sides. So, you know, decent amount of pages there. And it has 16 pockets and tuck spots and slightly more of the interactive elements as well. I'm not going to charge any more for the fact that it has the lace ribbon trim around the edge, because I had to put that there because I messed up. So usually something like that would cost an extra, you know, tiny little bit, but I'm not going to do it on this one because it was my stupid mistake. The next journal was the one created with the Shabby Peony journal kit. I'm going to call this one in my shop either Vintage Peony or Colourful Peony. I haven't made my mind up yet, but you will know from the links in the description box what I chose to do. This one I think is exactly the same, 38 pages or 76 sides and 16 pockets or tuck spots, plus various other interactive elements, fabric, things like that. I really like the way this one has so many different colours in, because often when you make journals, you buy journals, whatever, that are a vintage theme, you're kind of getting the same neutral tones throughout, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I like that, but I am enjoying the variety of colours in this one. You know, you've got like a pinky page here, and then another time there's a very bright orange colours. Here's a more greeny toned one. It's, you know, little phases of different colours I really like in this one in particular. It kind of works in all three journals, but I think it's particularly noticeable in this one. There's your pocket at the back this time with the envelope of the pressed florals. And then the next one is the one that was created with the kit that how have I forgotten the name of it again? Mixed Florals. This is the Mixed Florals kit. I'm going to call it the journal. I don't know. I had a brilliant idea for a name for it before, and it's just fallen from my brain onto the floor, and now I cannot find it. But it will be linked, and it should be obvious which one it is. Those water lily pages are my favourite. I am in love with those, but I do love water lilies, so I am a little bit biased on that one. If you like these journals, the style of journal, and either they've gone, or I mean hopefully, but or you just don't particularly like any of these, I do of course do custom orders. I don't charge much more for custom orders. Like, I know some people will go up by 50%. I do not do that. As long as I don't have to go out and get any extra supplies, I don't charge much of a premium on the custom orders. So feel free to message me. I have some other kits from Bontic Vintage that I'm going to use in other projects, but I have some roses ones if that interests you and things like that. So yeah, just putting it out there. You can always message me about custom orders if you are interested. And yeah, I think that's going to be enough shameless self-promoting for now. I hope you enjoyed this video and these journals. I certainly love making them, and I definitely love these printable kits as well. So thank you so much to Anton at Bontic Vintage for inviting me to collab and providing me with these beautiful products to work with. All the relevant links will be in the description box, as well as some other links to some of the products I've used, where I can find those links. And yeah, that's going to be it from me. Thank you so very much for watching. Please leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Chat to me down in the comments. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And yep, okay, I am going. Thank you again. Bye bye!